Today, I want to introduce you to a great American explorer of the outdoors.
So, my name is J.R. Harris, J. Robert Harris. Everybody calls me J.R. Living in New York City. I'm a native New Yorker. I've been backpacking, trekking, whatever you want to call it, since the Stone Age, or maybe right after the Stone Age, at least 60 years.
J.R. Harris has hiked some of the world's most remote wildernesses, unsupported and mostly alone, including Patagonia, the Australian outback, and most recently Tanzania.
A few weeks ago, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm still trekking, although I'm 79 years old.
I met Harris in Canton because he's here to give a talk at St. Lawrence University about the history of Black explorers that's often overlooked. We talked about that, his trips to the Adirondacks, and even the Grateful Dead on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day is provided by Renew Architecture and Design, designing camps, custom homes, and more throughout NCPR's listening region. Details at renewarchitecture.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Tuesday, September 12th. First up, a federal prison in the Adirondacks has been on lockdown since last week. That's caused stress for some family members of the incarcerated men inside. Emily Russell reports.
Latrice Anthony says she knew there was something wrong at the prison in Ray Brook when she didn't hear from her husband for days. He's one of more than 800 men behind bars at FCI Ray Brook.
Whether it's through email or, by phone, I usually hear from him every single day.
Anthony, who lives in northern New Jersey, tried calling the prison last week, but she says no one picked up. So she sent an email last Thursday saying she hadn't heard from her husband in days. She wanted to know if everything was okay. Then yesterday afternoon, she got a 2-sentence response from the prison. The email said, quote, "The institution is currently under lockdown. Your loved one is okay." Anthony said she wasn't reassured by that email. She's worried about her husband and the other inmates inside.
They are human and they do have people that love them. So at least if they could, let them make a courtesy call or something to let us know that they're okay. Because by them just saying your loved one is okay, that don't mean anything.
NCPR reached out to the Federal Bureau of Prisons and a representative at FCI Ray Brook by email and phone on Monday, but didn't hear back by 6 p.m. There was another lockdown earlier this year in January. A spokesperson at the time told NCPR that during these kinds of incidents, inmates, quote, have access to unit team staff, medical care, food, water, and other programs. But Latrice Anthony says it's difficult dealing with the lack of communication during a lockdown.
It's stressful. Very stressful. When you got somebody, that's in a prison, knowing that what goes on in the prison, whether it's the inmates fighting or it's the guards, it's very stressful because, we're on the outside and we don't know anything.
On Monday evening, an alert on the prison's website said all visitations had been suspended until further notice. Anthony said she had planned to make the 5-hour drive up from New Jersey last weekend, but canceled the visit due to the lockdown. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio.
J.R. Harris was among the first African Americans to be invited to join the elite Explorers Club in New York City. And today, he's on the club's board and chairs its Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Harris is giving a talk at St. Lawrence University tonight in Canton about the history of Black explorers and adventurers. He told me he spent years hiking in the Adirondacks in the 1970s.
I never saw another person of color out there. I've been to the Adirondacks many, many times. I've been on hiking trips, canoe trips, you name it. And this is going back into the 1970s. So, I never saw anyone who looked like me. And not only that, with people who saw me said, you're the only person of color I've seen out here, and I come out here a lot. So, I noticed the lack of BIPOC or people of color. The second thing is that I have to be very honest and admit that I never had a problem here. Nobody ever said anything to me. Nobody ever bothered me or anything like that. I've heard other people of color say that they've had incidents with people or what have you, but it never happened to me. And I think it's because I'm just a nice guy. And I don't really anticipate a problem. I grew up in New York City where we had every ethnicity, every religion. It was nothing to when you grow up like that and you're exposed to that at a young age. And so I just felt comfortable and confident when I was up in the Adirondacks here that nobody would really bother me, and I never had a problem, to be honest.
In your talk that you're giving at St. Lawrence University, you're kind of providing space to reclaim the role of African American adventurers and explorers outdoors.
Reclaim, in a way. That talk is called Sambo or Superman, The Rocky Road to Recognition. But that has nothing to do with me. It's not my Sambo or Superman and my Rocky Road to Recognition. The talk is really about African American explorers in the past whose deeds have gone either unrecognized or unreported. And if they were recorded or reported, they were often done in an exaggerated way, either negatively or positively, depending on what the social mores were of the time.
Can you give me an example that sort of illustrates that?
Well, let's take Matthew Henson. Now, Matthew Henson, 1909, went with Robert Peary and 4 Greenland hunters, and they were the first, apparently, to reach the North Pole. Matthew Henson was a black man. He had been with Peary, Admiral Peary, for 20 years in the Arctic, very skillful at hunting and training dogs and things like that. So the 6 of them went to the North Pole. When they came back in 1909, Peary was famous. He became famous for doing that. He also became president of the Explorers Club. Matthew Henson, nobody even talked to him about it. He was the guy without whom Peary never would have made it, because Peary's feet were frostbitten. He couldn't walk anymore. And Henson had to find the trail and break the trail. Peary is now the president of the Explorers Club. Henson can't even use the men's room in the Explorers Club back then. He wasn't given membership until the 1930s. And so back in the early 1900s, that was the way it was. If you were African American or black, you weren't going to get the credit that you deserved, even though he had spent 20 years up there. When the civil rights movement came in the 1960s, suddenly Matthew Henson was all that. He was even more than he did in an effort to boost who he was. So neither way was really totally accurate. The accuracy was somewhere in the middle between the two. And so what I'm shooting for is the middle in between the two. The accomplishments of people who came before us deserve to be recorded, number one. And number two, those accomplishments need to be reported accurately.
So let's talk about the Adirondacks. What's your favorite places to go?
I like to canoe in the Adirondacks, and I've done a lot of it. I've done the one from Old Forge to, I think, Saranac Lake or Tupper Lake or wherever that is, that long canoe trip. That was fantastic. I don't know how many of the high mountains I've climbed, but it's been a lot of them. I've also hiked the trail from Northville to Lake Placid. I did that thing in 1975 or something like that, but I still got the badge, the patch that they give out for that. The Adirondacks and I are old friends. I'll just put it that way.
J.R. Harris is an outdoor explorer and adventurer. He owns a marketing firm as his day job. He'll give his talk Sambo or Superman, The Rocky Road to Recognition, tonight at 7 o'clock at St. Lawrence University in Canton. I also want to know, Harris is a big Deadhead, and you can hear the story of how he got to hang out with Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, the entire band, at Watkins Glen in 1973. That great story is on our website, ncpr.org. We have more news there all the time, ncpr.org. Music today by Mark Corey and Ben Sharon, both of Watertown. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.